I want to come today and ask you kind of a harder question, one that can be filled with emotions, one that can be filled with some incredible reality, and sometimes that reality might hurt a little bit when we really process it. So I wanted to ask you this as we start off today. Do you ever feel like you never measure up? That you're never good enough, that you don't have what it takes to do the tasks or to be the person that God has called you to be? I'm going to be real. If we are being honest with ourselves, every one of us has answered that question as a yes. Right? There are so many times in our life where we feel that we don't have the skills, we don't have the physical acumen, we don't have the mental abilities, we don't have the talents to be able to do the thing that God has called us to do. I've heard parents come and tell me before, I just don't know if I have inside of me what it takes for me to be able to help my child through these times. Maybe you don't feel like you have the skill set at work to be able to do the job well, that you're being constantly passed over and it makes you feel inferior. Maybe you're a kid who is having a struggle in school where you just think that I'm not smart enough or I don't have the ability to be able to do what the teacher is asking me to do. Maybe it's physically or athletically. There's always somebody better in that way. I got to tell you, pastorally, I can relate to what you're saying. There are so many times that even in my ministry that I am just overcome with this sense and this understanding that the things that confront pastors on a daily basis, I just don't have the capability to do. I feel like I don't measure up sometimes. All of the issues, all the pressures, people coming and looking for counseling, having to come up with sermons all the time, having the right things to say. That's more than any human being can really do. And I just understand this. I just can't do it. But you know what I find is that even though that is an incredibly true reality, I'm not alone in this. The Apostle Paul actually dealt with the same thing. If you have your Bibles, open up to 2 Corinthians chapter 12. And in it, we're going to see just this incredible progression of what Paul had going on here. And so just to kind of give you a little bit of a warm up to where we are, Paul, and this is kind of, he's nearing some difficult moments in his life, we find, is that he had been able to have some incredible revelation from God. And Paul was feeling like he was higher, and yet there were some thorns in the flesh, as he calls them, some issues he had to deal with. Many people think they're physical. Whatever they are, they were torments that were coming on Paul, and Paul would say to keep himself humble. But in essence, it was to show an incredible lesson. So these thorns in the flesh were afflicting Paul, and he was realizing that they were impeding his ability to do what God had called him to do. And he prayed for them to be taken away. He believed that God was the one who was strong enough and powerful enough that he could do anything in these ways. And by the way, what was God's answer to Paul? His answer was no. How can God be loving this way? How can God say no when it would be so good to have this affliction taken away? But what we find is that no led to one of the greatest life-altering lessons that Paul had, and that is really meant for us as well. So in verse 9, we find this incredible statement where he says this, "But he said to me," and he is God saying it to Paul, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." And then Paul's response was, "Therefore I will boast all the more gladly in my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ might rest upon me." And what I find here is something that, as many of you know, I really loved the work of Peter Scazzero and the Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. One of the things there that was an incredible lesson is that if we are going to be experiencing the depth and the riches of God, we need to learn how to live life from a place of brokenness, where we allow God's power and God's grace and God's love to flow in us. That's what Paul was saying about that. I will boast in my suffering so that Jesus's power can be amplified to the people around us. I think we need to hear this today, everyone, that when we feel like we don't measure up, that is an amazing place for the Christian can be, because now our reliance, our trust is on God, and He will work for His glory and His purpose, and it is a win for everyone. And so for me, when I'm struggling and feeling like I just don't measure up, friends, I can take this verse to the bank, that His grace is sufficient for me, because God is going to make up everything that I don't have and then some, because it's no longer about me, but it's about Him. So take that with you today. May that be an encouragement to you to press into the presence of God in deep and rich ways so that His grace can overflow.